So starting with Amna. So Amna, if you can do your introduction.
Yes, hello. Thank you for having me over. So I'm Amna Khateeb. I am the Chief Digital Officer at GroupM Pakistan. So GroupM Pakistan is basically the only multinational media company we have in Pakistan. It's part of WPP, our head office being in UK. Our scope of work, or what we do is we do media management, media consultation, media planning, and overall communication planning for our clients. We've been in the business for the last 20 plus years. We are the largest media company, which is the way to measure is on the basis of the billing. So I head the digital division of GroupM, which actually came into being in 2014. I've been in the industry, media industry, since the last 20 plus years, working with multiple agencies and almost all of the advertisers in Pakistan. My scope now since the last 7 plus years has been on digital, and my work, or what I've been, entrusted with at the company, is how do we grow digital in Pakistan, be it from the front of how advertisers work, be it from increasing the ecosystem of digital in Pakistan, be it working with new startups or new e-commerce partners or new advertising partners or data partners, basically understanding how can we optimize this information and data and then take it out to our clients and then create and enlarge the way we reach out to our clients via digital. So in short, that's what I do.
Thank you so much, Amna, and thank you for briefing us about the industry. Clearly, digital media is of extreme importance, especially these days, and how both the advertising media industry is evolving with time. With that, Adnan Saab, over to you for your introduction.
Thank you so much for the invitation, Rahim. I am based in Ireland. I work at Ornua. Ornua is a dairy cooperative headquartered in Dublin, Ireland. I'm on holidays these in Karachi. I'm flying back to Dublin tomorrow. But Kamal has given me an opportunity to talk to you guys and join the session. So a little bit more about Ornua. It's a dairy cooperative based in Ireland, but we do business to over 110 countries, and it's the largest exporter of dairy products from Ireland. My main expertise areas are cloud computing and also security. So I have two parallel roles that I'm managing as a head of ICT and also as CISO. Prior to working with Ornua, I was working with another food sector organization, Global Kerry Group. So I've spent there 5 years, and with Ornua, I'm over 4 years now. So in 9 and 10 years, I'm working in food manufacturing sector. I'm passionate about technology, mostly working in cloud and security. So I'm delighted to be here. Thanks.
Thank you, Adnan Saab. And good to reconnect with you once again. Thank you for the introduction. So moving to Mina Salman. Welcome, Mina.
Assalamu alaikum, everyone. First of all, thank you so much for having me over. So I am the co-founder of Bagallery.com. I hope you guys can hear me properly.
We can.
So I'm the co-founder of Bagallery.com. It was a very homegrown startup that I started a few years ago because I was looking for a job. I'm also a full-time mother also. So I wanted to do something of my own rather than, looking for jobs because it was just not working for me. And I've been in UAE for like more than 10 years now. So when we moved to UAE, I was looking for jobs and all that. But suddenly I got this idea of starting Bagallery.com, followed by my passion, and that is shopping. So I basically use that passion of shopping, of hunting down the products like, beauty products and fashion products. And we started working. My husband, Salman, he also joined in, partially at that time. He was guiding me about so many things because I was new in the business. I never had that, entrepreneurial mindset. So he started guiding me, and then we started, building up a team in Pakistan, because before we were focused very much in the UAE because that was the goal. And a lot of people ask me why your startup is named as Bagallery. So I think it's a good forum to clear it all for you, because when I started off initially, I just wanted to sell bags. So, that was the ultimate goal. But, where you start off and where you head off, it's just like a it was a very interesting route. So from UAE, we shifted our market to Pakistan, and I think we entered the market at the right time, where beauty and fashion, they were picking up. E-commerce industry was gradually picking up in Pakistan. There was a lot of awareness. People started feeling comfortable in, shopping online, and, how to pay cash on deliveries and how to put their cards in it. So it has been a long, interesting journey, and I'm absolutely proud of how me and my team, we've together built up this whole, e-commerce portfolio, and, we have encouraged a lot of other, e-commerce, business to start also. So this is from my side.
Mina, thank you so much. Excellent. I mean, I had heard of Bagallery. I had visited it. I didn't know my wife frequently uses it, but obviously it's great in terms of how the company has evolved and the progress made. So hats off to you and your husband as well as the team. So moving to Adeel. Adeel, good to see you again. Adeel's a good friend. And I must say he's also doing really well in terms of driving the science and technology agenda through the Ministry of Foreign Affairs. I'll let Adeel introduce himself.
Rahim Saab, thank you. Pleasure to be here. Thank you to Kawal Saab as well for putting this panel together. Rahim Saab and I frequently collaborate together. It is always good to have a friendly face in the bureaucratic nexus. So I'm part of the Science Diplomacy Division at the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, whose focus is on connecting scientific and technological cooperation to the network of embassies and consulates. And we also create synergies between national and international stakeholders. By training, I'm a scientist, I'm a biotechnologist. So that's what drives my ambition. So that's the brief intro. Thank you.
Thank you, Adeel. Great to have you on the panel. So moving to Hadi Tabani. Hadi.
Assalamu alaikum. My name is Hadi Tabani. I'm the CEO of Liquid Technologies, and very happy to be on the forum as well as on this panel. I come from a group company called Tabani Trading, and we started Liquid Technologies around 4 years ago when I moved back from the US. I was a consultant at Accenture, advising the Fortune 100s of the US on how to use analytics for and AI for easing their business, essentially. And from there, a passion was born to basically use data and AI to make sure that the decision makers of today and tomorrow have the right access of data at the right time. Since then, Liquid Technologies has grown year over year, and today we are around 40 projects deep, 10 million raised in startup funding, and currently I am on the board of around 4 startups as a CTO. That's about it. Thank you, Hadi, and pleasure connecting with you and getting to know you and the work you are doing. So in terms of the format of the discussion, so I will ask our esteemed panelists some questions to get their perspectives and insights, and please feel free to jump on if you want to add anything or give your perspective, or if you have a different dimension to add to. So it's kind of an open discussion in terms of sharing our views and insights. So I'll start first. So for our topic of future of technology. So let me put it this way. So I personally feel that the future is very uncertain, right? So if you look at how technology is disrupting almost every industry these days, so it's also it's getting difficult to envision or to imagine what will happen in the future. And since technology has become part of and I think there are over 3.5 billion searches on Google currently. The way, if you just look at Pakistan, for example, over 100 million broadband connections alone, and the way the penetration for data is increasing. So
it's very interesting compared to what is happening today. I personally feel we are just at the beginning of a revolution which will basically touch everyone, every citizen, every business across the planet. And Hadi talked about data. So, more and more and more how we see data being used, and the kind of the utilization of data, and how the businesses are growing, especially with what's happened in the pandemic and the explosion of cloud and the data passing through. So all this, I think, raises a very interesting question, and I'll ask Adnan sir, perhaps you can. I'll start with you, and I'll let anyone else to also comment on it. So to me, and I also look at most of us, I'm sure, follow Elon Musk on Twitter and seeing what's happening with SpaceX and talking about colonization on Mars, etc. So, as growing up, do you think science fiction is really starting to become reality? Will we see the concept about? I always wondered as a child in watching Star Wars, well, will we be able to teleport one day, right? Or like I said, have colonization in space in different planets. So how do you see this, the perspective? What's your view on this? And what do you think the future holds for us? And ask other panelists to also jump in their views.
Yeah, you mentioned about Elon Musk. I think earlier this year, he stated that one planet is not enough. We need to look for multiple planets. Maybe Mars, he's already looking into those missions. So initially, I think the science fictions help us to rationalize and define our identity against what could be the art of possibility. First, you need to think about the future, what could happen. And that's why these programs that you see, Star Wars and other ones, are talking about art of possibility. And it's a step towards what can be done beyond imagination. And we have seen in the past that things we thought may not happen, but it happens. Recently, we have seen, like this year, maybe 2-3 main billionaires already went for space tourism, and is growing. That market is growing quite significantly. So I personally don't think that the space colonization is going to happen within 10 years, but it is on the roadmap. You can't disregard that. It will never happen. It's a hypothetical, in my opinion, permanent settlement that we are thinking about, that we can live there in an orbit where we have everything, but we also need to think about the capital investment and the benefit it can bring and the risk it's taking. So if we need to live in this world for another millions of years, then scientists think that our orbit or space is not enough. You need to go beyond thinking about what else can be done, where else you can start producing energy. We are already seeing energy crisis. They're talking about solar systems you can use. I think the main area where we are going to see improvements in space is around first space tourism, and then they are also looking for beyond our planet. But it's going to be a long journey. I don't really think that it's going to be within 5 to 10 years, but we are going into the right directions. And if we really need to think about why we should do it, why scientists are looking for, one is around the scientific research, but also there are different ways to make money, commercialization, solar power, satellite systems. There are discussions around it that you can use the energy from other planets to provide electricity to our space aircrafts. Asteroid mining is another area, and space manufacturing. These are the number of areas that I'm seeing. That's one of the reasons they are looking for. But to build a whole plan, I think it's going to take time. But I think they are looking for different ways how this whole area can help you. But I think we are not really there yet.
Right. And just moving on, and I'll move on to the other panelists. So in terms of the perspective Adnan Saab gave, if anyone wants to add on to that one, and secondly, how do you see that the future of technology evolving. If we talk about Pakistan, right? I gave some stats around the broadband usage. We all know that smartphone penetration is increasing, cloud is becoming a norm, etc. So if anyone on the panel wants to add on to what Adnan said, also give a local perspective on how do you see this changing in Pakistan.
So I can add if
Sure,
nobody's going
Amna,
for
please
it.
go
Okay.
ahead.
Okay. So I think colonization on other planets might be a little far, a little far for us to happen. But in Pakistan, the pace at which technology is moving or the way adoption of technology is happening is, I think we did not expect that. Pandemic also helped sort of supercharge things the way they were happening. And I think Mina will be a very, big advocate of that. But the way e-commerce has boomed in Pakistan and the way companies and consumers have adopted e-commerce, I think we were not anticipating that prior to the COVID situation. But in Pakistan also, in terms of data, in terms of not just talking about data, but actually, making use of that data, making, logic of that data, and then putting it back into the whole system is something that's really started to happen. A few days ago, there were drone testing happening in Pakistan, locally created, of how delivery should be done. So even in the things that we have, technology is now playing a role in sort of supercharging it or taking it to the next step as faster than we had anticipated. So I would say, maybe we're a little far away in Pakistan in terms of being in the metaverse universe or, utilizing that. But in our own smaller, quicker steps, we going far ahead and at a very fast pace than what we had analyzed for or anticipated for Pakistan. So I think future, we keep on saying future technology is future or future is coming. I think future is here. So whatever we're doing now is now the change. So it's just probably the beginning, but this is the change.
Yes.
So I just want to
sorry, just before that, if everyone else can mute your mic. If you're not speaking, please mute, because there's some background noise. Thank you. Sorry, Mina, please.
Just to add to Amna's point about pandemic and e-commerce boom, actually we all experienced it. When pandemic happened, no one knew what's going to happen because we all were like at home, our children were at home, and we really didn't know how to proceed. But I think that was a time, whenever we talk about technology, social media's aspect, you just cannot ignore it. Social media played a huge role. Eventually, family meetups, and we've experienced family weddings happening on Zoom and people going live from their Instagram accounts or Facebook accounts, and everything was there. Everybody was connected to each other digitally, and that was a time when there was a lot of focus on beauty and self-care. And I think that is one of those times when skincare got its boom. Actually, I'm also a beauty content creator, so I have actually experienced it. Like, people got more conscious about how to take care of themselves, and then their skincare and all these brands coming up. A lot of people actually during the pandemic, they left their jobs to come up with their own beauty or fashion or any related brands. So social media, I think, has a huge role to play in the technology, and I think everybody is just glued to social media. I mean, like, from youngsters, unfortunately, but teenagers are also on social media. Like, even people like my mother, she's around 70 years old, and she sends me a DM on Instagram, and she's actually clicking photos at the mall, and she's sending me pictures on WhatsApp to select from, like, whatever she's offering. So I think technology has really penetrated, starting from, like, it's covering all of the age gap, and here we are in the middle trying to see where our children are going, and how the elders have also adapted to technology.
Right. No, definitely. And like you mentioned, we saw during the pandemic and also in Pakistan as well as globally, how the digital transformation across businesses have occurred. Adeel, if I think it would be good if you can also give, given your background and your education and the experience, some perspective around the biotech side, right? What's happening in that world, and how do you see, especially now with all the because of the COVID, advancements being made and research being done on vaccine development, etc., and how this is shaping up. I think it'll be interesting to know, in China this year, the most the number of new unicorns have been in the biotech sector itself. So that's how quickly the landscape has changed and changing. So I think it'll be very useful to get some insights on the biotech side from you.
Yeah, thank you, Rahim sir, for that query. So first thing is that with regards to biotech as well as other technologies, there are a lot of convergence. So nano biotechnology, AI-driven biotechnology, IoT in agriculture. So there's a lot of convergence. So convergence is the trend of the future. That's something that we can't ignore as an industry, as a government regulator, or as a society, as a consumer. So convergence is one thing that is impinging on the new products and the suites that are being developed. With regards to biotech, obviously the pandemic has increased the consumer perception and also the industry supply demand as well, that you need to develop new products and services that can take care of health security. And not just biotech is an entire spectrum. So you have got towards the food security, agriculture products, so genetically modified seeds, gene editing. Jennifer Doudna and Emmanuel Charpentier won the Nobel Prize last year in chemistry for bringing CRISPR, which is the gene editing that brings us so much new products and services. So that is also enabling a lot of the biotech industry to evolve. And secondly, because of the development of digital agriculture and precision agriculture, so agri-tech and agri-bio are also converging together, which is really expanding the scope of biotech. In Pakistan, there's a thriving biotech academia. So for the audiences, there are around 50 biotech research centers across Pakistan, from Karachi to Islamabad to Faisalabad, and they're working across the spectrum on different products and services. What they need is a industry academia collaboration. That's what lacking. So we have got state-of-the-art researchers. For example, in Karachi, HEJ is doing a great job in biotech as well. So the spectrum is rapidly expanding, but what needs to go side by side are regulations. So the issue in the future with regards to expansion of any tech would be how effective the regulatory paradigms are. Are they pro-industry? Are they too preventive? What will be the intellectual property rights discussion around it? Even with the COVID vaccines, we saw it brought a lot about politicization in the form of immunity passports, which vaccine would be acceptable. So simultaneously, these technologies are developing, but so is the socio-political narrative that goes with it. So as innovators, as entrepreneurs, we also need to look at the norms or the policy entrepreneurship side as well. So biotech will keep on expanding. That is the impetus it has gained since the last 20-25 years. It will keep on growing. Like we're talking about human augmentation, gene therapies, drought-tolerant crops as well. But what really needs to happen is a policy environment that is supportive of the innovation. So that's my 2 cents on it.
No, thank you, Adeel. And no, absolutely, very valid points. Like you said, it's just not about the technology itself, but also the social political aspects of how this is used across the globe. Moving on to Hadi, and so Hadi, data companies, whether we call them tech companies or social media companies, there's a debate around that, but we all know that companies like Facebook or Instagram, the real source of revenue is data monetization and how they use data. Pakistan so far, unfortunately, does not have a Data Protection Act. There is a draft which has been there and has gone through a couple of revisions, and in the process of being tabled sometime in the future, so it can be enacted. And the use of data, individual data, data privacy issues, etc., similar to how GDPR was implemented in Europe, can be, then these issues, and then basically the law is needed for companies operating in Pakistan or using data from Pakistan to comply. There's also been debate in the US Congress around, do we really break some of these companies, right? How powerful they're becoming because of the data aspect, and like we talked earlier, how data is controlling every aspects of life, and every whatever we do, there's data generated for that, and that generation and utilization of information continue to increase. So how do you, and given your work on the AI side, use of which is dependent on the data, so how do you see that evolving, right, for these companies? Do you think data monetization, data privacy is a subject which will become much more serious in terms of how the different governments look at it? How do you see the different social media companies and the social media platforms using use data for a monetization perspective? I mean, some insights around that will be great for our audience.
Thanks, Rahim. That was actually a great question and a very complex question as well. I think we walked through impact of data and impact of technology to creation of data by, let's say, Facebook, Twitter, TikTok, and usage of these social media channels and the amount of data that generates. I think from 2010 up till now, we've generated 100 times more data than we generated any time previous to 2010. And that says volumes as to where we're going, right? Technology has made it easier to learn. All of the e-learning platforms that you see today are all data-centric. It's made it easier to farm. You see a lot of agri-tech coming up, biotech coming up, as Adeel Saab and Adnan Saab also talked about. And there's a lot of data regarding what to farm, how to make it more prosperous, so on and so forth. Similarly, there's a lot of data around building cities, and it's become easier to essentially build cities. Google's firm, there's a separate firm of Google that actually only works on generating the layers that are being used to build cities. For example, sewerage, gas, electricity, utilities, all of that. They are generating blueprints to make that easier. So when you say how is data being used and what's the future of data, we're doing it today. We're doing it, and what we're building from the ground up, we're going to be doing, and we're going to be evolving for the next 10 years, right? Where we are today, you were saying that there's a lot of data generation happening from Amazon, from Facebook. There's a lot of data generation happening from each and every activity that you do. You pick up your phone, 3 apps at the right time know what you've done. They know that your eyes are currently looking at your phone, right? What are those 3 apps? Apple iOS, Apple Watch, Apple Health, and Maps. They have access to each and every data points, right? And the concept is insane. The work that is happening, the kind of endpoints that are being generated, there's a lot of volatility and a lot of complexity to these data points. And what GDPR did, it basically made sure that data generation is okay, data monetization is okay, as long as you're not monetizing personal data. That's what it did. It kind of outlined and prioritized, it kind of curated the security layer, the privacy layer for each individual, so that they know what amount of their data is being shared and how it's being shared. Simple as that. Any other part of data is being monetized. There's a company, Snowflake, that works on Amazon. It basically gathers TBs and petabytes of data on its data warehousing. And Abu Dhabi government, the biggest pharmaceutical companies, one of my companies actually, Element Data, works on that traction. We monetize data for these companies. We put up publicly available data, we manage the warehousing, we manage the pipelines, and we monetize the data. What is that data? That data is being the public data that's available for clinical trials. All the pharma companies are using it, are accessing it, and they are making better drugs. The COVID clinical drugs, COVID vaccines came out of what? It came out of these data validations, these data experiments. So I feel like the future is very bright. The technology has impacted the right things, and it's created a lot of possibilities for people like myself, Amna, Mina, even Adnan Saab, and most of all, the government, Adeel. They know that all of these things are happening. How can they pipeline it so that we come out as one of the pioneers and one of the biggest tech conglomerates, tech behemoths of the new world. We can do it. The first virus was created by a Pakistani man. We can do anything. That's about it from me.
I'd like to add something to it. So when we talk about data that is being generated by Google, Facebook, or any of the other platforms, it is a two-way thing. So we should see it as a two-way thing. So for example, if advertisers or these platforms are collecting this data, they will of course monetize it because that's their business. They will monetize it. But once they are collecting that data, so on the other end of the spectrum, the consumer eventually gets to see content or information or products which is actually relevant to what they need. So it's not that the data is just being used by Google, Facebook, Twitter, TikTok, whatever, just to monetize and make money. It is also in the benefit of the consumer that the messaging that they see, the products that are for them that they get to see is based on the data that they have generated. So we should not take it as it's a one-ended or a one-sided sort of a conversation. Both benefit from it. So, you're right, GDPR and all of these policies are put in place in order to protect data. And as more people get to understand what data is and how it is utilized, companies, all the leading FMCGs or all the bigger advertisers, as the policies start putting in their own rules and regulations on how to use this data. So eventually, I'm sure, as this becomes even more streamlined, or as companies get into data. So right now, there's a lot of conversation on data, to be honest, and actually who utilizes this data is very less. So everybody talks about big data, everybody talks about that data. So how do we, capitalize it, how to use it? But there are very few companies who actually have put a cloud, where their data is being sorted, or any sense is being made out of that data. So I think that we should take this as a positive for both the sides, because if a consumer is giving out their data, they're then getting all the right information for themselves also, the right content to see, the right products to buy, right recommendations for themselves, comes up also.
Not just that, I feel I'm not very well put, but the governments, especially if there's not a government, then a central body with the private-public partnership needs to kind of regularize so that there's privacy in place for all of these e-commerce, all of these other public data sets, right? Where the end consumer is safe in sharing their data, knowing that it won't be used for advertisements, for creation of things that they are not willing to be part of, for example, right? Now the whole concept regarding this is the policy part, right? The EU sat down, it took them 15 years to create a GDPR compliance, and a good enough GDPR compliance that they can roll out, and companies hand in hand were essentially be part of it. Because if companies said, hey, we're not going to do this, the entire activity that happened would have gone to waste. So there needs to be a public, and STZA, I feel, sits in a very special position here, because it has a lot of buy-in from the private sector. For example, I am very involved with the STZA planning commissions, with Amir Saab, with other parts of the STZA committee members. And I feel like part of the STZA could be the data planning committee, where we figure out where public and private partnership happens, and they figure out, okay, what are the compliances that any company needs to meet as far as data privacy goes? Simple as that. And if you lay out very simple, basic things and then evolve them over time, I think that's good enough. And that's a good start to have as well.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And thank you for your comments. I think what I'll add to this is, and clearly why GDPR and in Europe this law was passed was, like Hadi mentioned, on the policy side. So, and there are, ethical dilemmas or ethical issues which we have to deal with, right? So as a consumer, I need to know how my personal information is used, how is it stored, and how is it accessed, right? So clearly, I don't want my personal information which can be impersonated. So then it comes to misinformation. And we are right now talking about, there's also a conversation around deepfakes, for example, right? So it's extremely critical that, whichever companies is operating, they have the they have the accountability, they have the right sense of the, oversight and responsibility, and also the discussions, Hadi, you would know, and you would be catering on how AI is used, for example, in making decisions, right? So, what kind of how do we ensure that when decisions are made or data is used for decision making, no one is discriminated when it comes to use of that data. So I think it's a very important and a critical aspect. I also personally feel for international companies to come and invest, international tech companies, large tech companies to come and expand their operations in Pakistan is also very, very important. That the law is enacted in Pakistan as well, and the policy is given by the government, and clearly the government wants that the data of its citizens is protected. That's the heart of it, right? And we have to have the right balance where companies are allowed to operate, or or data can be stored on cloud, but at the same time it has to be safe, secure, encrypted. Just moving on to that, from that, I think Adnan sir, moving to you, there's always a discussion when you're talking about the future of technology, and this is a conversation I've been part of for at least 5 years, right? So, and people always debate that with AI, with technology, what will happen? What will be the impact of the human workforce? So there's an argument that the number of mechanical jobs will reduce. There's also an argument that there will be a global shortage of the new skill set which will be required. So there's a constant debate around how does AI, robotics, for example, machine learning impact the employee workforce, etc. So so it'll be good to get your perspective on that, and we can then jump on to some of the other panelists.
That's a really good question. I think AI, artificial intelligence, will create a whole new working landscape. Like some jobs will be gone, or we need to retrain our staff to make sure that they are still employable. And it's the responsibility of the government, the industries, and also those small and medium enterprise organizations to make sure that they are working on technologies and they can train their untrained staff. So it's not only about AI, it's any other technologies that are changing the way we do business. I've seen this in business transformation. I've been part of 2 major business transformation in 2 companies. And I've seen this in person myself, that some of the jobs will be made redundant because of the introduction of cloud, introduction of AI, robotics, machine learning. But the way you need to tackle this, because it's quite sensitive to your heart, because you may lose your job. So what you look for your workforce.
Also RPA. RPA is very important to kind of address over here.
Yeah, absolutely. So, and these things are changing, I'm saying it. So I'm saying there are 3 main areas where the impact of AI is happening. One around the jobs. The job market will have to understand that in the future, there are new jobs will be created. And the predictions are there will be more human capital needed, more people needed to do the job, but these will be on a different scale and different types of jobs. But what about your existing workforce? How do you make sure that the existing workforce is trained and able to do the job? So you need to make sure first you need to create that environment, and there is a role from the government, STZA as well, to make sure they provide that environment to train those staff. So I think I'll give you a basic example. Like if you are working as SQL DBA, database administrator, because of the deployment of cloud, everyone is going to the cloud as platform as service. If I am working as a DBA, maybe after 5 years, that job won't exist. You have to make sure that you can work on big data. That's not directly linked with AI, but just giving you a concept of the jobs which you used to do in the past may not exist. You have to look into the cloud technologies and you have to train your internal staff. Like if I talk about in Ireland, every other company that I talk to either are already in the cloud, and they are already either in hybrid or they're planning to go to the cloud. But when I talk to people here in Pakistan, I see people are still working in on-prem, they're looking for the regulations that, again, STZA and the SEC, these organizations' responsibility to make it easier for companies to go into the cloud. So one area I would say is around the impact on job. The second area I would see is around impact on business, the way you do your business. For example, my background is around security. So used to have a SIEM technology and SOAR technology, which is security orchestration, automation, and response. What SOAR technology will do in the future is you will have AI and machine learning will be making those decisions which used to be managed and done by human being. So you don't have to manage your 24/7 SOC yourself. Now, this is where we are going is you will have SOC as a service available, and these are robotic automations and machine learning algorithms will be making those decisions much better than a human being can do. So what you need to do, you need to make sure you train your staff to make sure that they're compatible for the future technologies. That's, I think, is happening in everywhere. The area which I'm worried about from the jobs perspective for people who are working on repetitive jobs. Any job which is a repetitive job is on threat, in my opinion, because then what will happen, this automation is going to get rid of these jobs, and employers are thinking, I'm going to save my workforce, but they need to hire more people who are more trained or more skilled. So rather than hiring your new staff, why not you train your existing staff? Third aspect I would say this will happen is around working culture and ethics. What I've seen during the pandemic here back in Ireland is we used to work mostly in the office in 1 day, 2 days. You have to ask your manager to get permission to work from home. But now things are totally different. Most companies in Ireland are working on a hybrid mode, 2 days from office, 3 days in office, and then working remaining days from home. And this is the norm. Even though when we are hiring a staff, the first question that they ask is, are you offering hybrid working or not? And I'm hoping that similar thing is happening here in Pakistan as well. So I think we need to help our employees. Employees are worried about it, especially those who are doing repetitive tasks. Those are not technical. We need to help them as an employer, as an organization, as an industry to make sure that there is a light at the end of the tunnel. You're not just leaving them behind, but what are you going to do with that workforce? You need to make sure you train them. So careful management of that change is also necessary because, as I mentioned, I've been part of 2 major business transformation. The biggest change, the biggest difficulty that you face in business transformation is not the technology, it's the change of culture. People don't want to change because they think if they change, it's a threat to their job and they don't want to change. So the biggest resistance you always see is coming from the change management. So how do you make sure you train your staff, you give them tools, and you also give them surety that by bringing these technological changes, they're not going to lose their job. So it's very important, especially if you think about Pakistani market. How do we make sure? Like one example I can give, like we have seen here, Uber and all those technologies happening. Even a rickshaw driver can use those technologies, and it is fascinating to see someone who has not even completed his matriculation or anything, but can use a smart technology to do or manage their own business. It means that if a rickshaw driver can use Uber or Careem, can also use other technologies that we as an industry can look and start offering them. So why they can't use Amazon, Draz, and all those applications? So I think there is an appetite. We just need to make sure we manage this carefully.
Yeah, well, thank you, Adnan. I think to your point, my personal belief is that, like you mentioned, there will be a large number of jobs which will become redundant, but at the same time, a large number of new skill set will be required. Hence, even from Pakistan's perspective, it's extremely critical that the upskilling is done because now we are moving towards, we're already part of the 4th industrial revolution. So we're talking about digital economy, where the input is the human brain. So we have to train our people in this skill set. So just on that point, and I'll ask Mina and Amna to also comment. So clearly, also technology has changed, especially we talked about the human skill set, but also the work culture, the workforce, how people are operating. Like Adnan mentioned, many of my friends who work for large tech, large global companies in the US, they've not been to the office for the last, for over 2 years now. And I don't know when they'll be going back to the office because they're allowed to work from home permanently as well. So, in terms of, so Mina, when you, obviously it's, in your business and hiring people, what are some of the trends you see from a recruitment perspective, from a workforce perspective, also from a work culture perspective, and how technology has disrupted the way people work, because anything and everything can be remote now, and that's what we've seen it. So some insights on that, and how do you see that shaping up in the future as well?
Yeah, thank you so much for this question. Adding to Adnan Saab's point, actually, I think in our case, we are the ones, we have only expanded our team instead of reducing it. So, mashallah, we have grown by leaps and bounds. So I think there's a little, Pakistan is a little bit behind of seeing, robots, because I've seen here in Carrefour in UAE, like robots are taking the inventory and they're doing it repeatedly. So I still want to take that technology back home and, get all those robots, and, when there is less pressure on human beings, and, they're doing the inventory, and there are very less signs of error. And coming back to your point of work,
we have built that.
Okay, I really want to
we have built that in Pakistan. Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
It's a beautiful technology. And coming back to this work culture, I think my husband used to take 90 flights per year, and all the time he used to put his one bag, and the next bag he used to go and travel. So all these things happened, and suddenly everybody, because we had this kind of this fear of, we had this FOMO that if we are not going to go to the office, this means that work will not happen. So that kind of FOMO has actually, people have gotten used to it. Like, you can have your laptop, you can be in your comfortable attire, you can still cook, you can see your kids also, you can do your house things also, and still you can work. And at Bagallery, we've also tried to implement this. First people were very reluctant to this. They didn't like the fact that they are not going to come to the office. But now we are giving them, this leverage that they can work from home as long as they're online, they're doing their work, they're answering the emails, and then there's WhatsApp also. I think there's too many areas of connectivity. You're constantly connected to your team day and night. So, they're there, they're doing their job. So I think it's a good thing, working from home. And I think people have actually felt more relaxed also. Like, I think you're not rushing to the office, you're not in the traffic, you're not burning your fuel. So, and still you're connected, you're still doing your meetings from the Zoom, you're still on your emails. So I think it's a very good thing, and this culture should continue, where people are like more like mentally, they're happy. So mental health, again, it's a very, very important point. And when you're constantly in a rush, moving from one meeting to another meeting, and then you're going here and there, and then you have to maybe like people like me, I have to pick my child also from school, and then you have to drop him back home. So there are too many things going on. So I think for your mental peace, it's important. And if it works for you, nothing like it, stay connected, be home, and, be in your own comfortable zone.
Right. No, thank you so much, Mina, for that. Amna, what about in the, some perspective on what you're seeing in the digital media industry? Is it the same where people are still working from home, or employees are still allowed to work from home, or how and if any impact, how do you see any impact on the productivity, on the workforce culture, on teamwork, etc.? There's a lot of debate. If you don't meet your colleagues, so how do you create that bonding in terms of working together? Because many times you're dependent on different teams to produce and give your best, right? So how do you see that culture in the media industry?
So even before the pandemic, we had agile working twice in a month. So which would mean that after every 2 weeks, we had a day off in which we could take, agile working. So it was not totally new when we stepped into the pandemic. But absolutely being online and not being in the office honestly had its pros and cons. So rightly said, the pros were that we had more time, we could, balance our work life. But interestingly, in the beginning, when work from home started, the work-life balance absolutely went out of the window, because Clients thought, okay, now you're home, you have all the time, so all the meetings can happen. So in the beginning, it went haywire. We had meetings happening at 10 o'clock in the night, we had meetings happening later, and then we had to, sort of put our foot down and say, work from home does not mean work all the time. So in an agency environment where we are working with a few, we're working with clients, so we had to sort of create those processes that work from home means working at a certain time and not that you're available all the time. So that did happen in the beginning. When things got controlled, then it became better. And now, even now that although we're back, but we still have work from home or agility in place. So if you want to take a few days, working from home, that is something that we still do. But coming on the cons part, it did affect the human interaction element between the teams. We did a lot of new hiring in this time period. So the new people were not aware of the culture because they had not sort of lived through it. The team bonding, so it did affect. So I think the right balance that we found was to have a hybrid model. Come a few days and then have a few agile days. Come a few days and then, so in this way, we were getting the best of both worlds. So you get a sense of the culture, you get a sense of how the teams work, because you need that team bonding also. And then you also have agile days where you can sort of take it at, take a little bit of a ease in the whole day. So for us, it was a mix of both. That is how it has worked out better for us.
Right. And like I think how Mina mentioned, so I used to travel extensively as well, and we used to take flights for 5-hour flights to have meetings, for example, right? And no one envisioned all this could happen digitally as well. And I'm sure for the airlines globally, they never thought, because business travel will go down significantly as well. So, that's how the uncertain, typically the future is based on technology, how I started. So Adeel,
but I'll add one thing, sorry,
I'll
add one thing. So what it did help was that a lot of transit time in order to get to a meeting, even if it was like a local meeting in your same city or just going to a client's office, that really cut down. Yeah. And from the people that you were having a meeting with, it also became a norm that it's okay to have an online meeting. So that really helped. So for a 1-hour meeting, 1 ghante ka transit sort of got cut down. So that was good. So I think mindsets have changed, which is a good thing. But agile cannot be the total future. It has to be a hybrid, as I would suggest. Okay, please go on.
Right. Adeel, so let's talk a bit different in terms of, like, you mentioned some of the things earlier. So when I'm speaking to a lot of international companies, international donors, more specifically in technology. So one thing which I've seen in Pakistan, based on my recent conversations with many international multilateral agencies, donors, etc., there's a lot of there's a big focus on climate change, right? And so that kind of seems to becoming a really serious topic for and doing work not only in Pakistan but globally. And it's a global challenge for sure. But from a technology, risk management, investment perspective, how do you think Pakistan can, really leverage this? Because there are different trends, different, technology areas which have their wave coming in, and then again, because it's such a global problem and global challenge. So how do you see the convergence of technology and climate change when it comes to Pakistan?
Thank you, Rahim. So it's a great question, and definitely the need of the hour. So the Sustainable Development Goals really gave countries across the world good policy frameworks and yardstick that they could focus their technological achievements on. So tech for development became a good mantra for companies and governments as well. Even right now, many countries are trying to tether their science policy or foreign policy objective with how they can leverage technology for development. And it is very important for any country that how can they leverage these new and emerging technologies. We use the word new and emerging tech, but these technologies have matured over a period of 10, 20 years. Climate change has become the need of the hour, because we can now visibly see what's happening across the world. Climate change was also a threat 10 years ago, but now we can visually manifest it. So the way like entrepreneurship or ecosystem work, they identify a problem, and that's what the pitch of science diplomacy also is, that you can actually leverage science to solve global problems. The idea that all of these problems, climate change, food security, nutritional imbalances, health security, they all have a science component. And science, the way it is practiced across the world, it's a neutral language. It's the same everywhere. So it becomes a great harmonizing tool. So that's where like developing countries, the condition that Pakistan is, it can really leverage its entrepreneurial ecosystem by tethering itself towards the climate change or the sustainability agenda. Like that's what I've been seeing as well in my interaction with startups as well, that sustainability has become important for them in terms of manufacturing, in terms of how they do their business. And that's how they've also, digital readiness indexes, they're trying to reflect that in their business practice as well. The important thing is, how do you optimize and pick and choose technologies? Like all countries, they can't, develop all sorts of technologies. They have to basically narrow themselves down into a certain niche area. And that's where, like, because the current government's agenda on climate change becomes really important, that, we can identify like 5-10 good startups that are working in these areas and then synergize them. And that's what happens in developed countries, that they create those clusters. So that's an approach that, we are going towards, but it's important that we keep on like creating that leverage. And that would really help us like with donors and grants as well, that if your project or your product or service has got a sustainability agenda, it moves up the ladder in being selected. Thank you.
Right. So what I would suggest is, Adeel, I think it's an excellent point. And I think I'm personally very interested, and we can look at how we can also collaborate on this from a federal government perspective and drive this agenda forward more specifically from a startup ecosystem. So thank you for that. I would like to thank everyone for the participation. I'll just in my concluding remarks, I would say that we talked about technology, the future, some of the ethical issues, the risk, what's happening in the biotechnology world, the use of data, AI, etc., the impact on workforce. So I think we were able to cover a lot of topics within this time frame. I think so. It's very important that how we see things. I think digital disruption is a reality. We all need to embrace it as individuals, for organizations where we work, in our own lives. I think extremely critical for businesses to embrace it, and technology has a big play if we talk about Pakistan and how Pakistan has the opportunity to diversify its GDP and really move towards a knowledge economy, and where we can really promote entrepreneurship and innovation. We can already see happening with things happening in the startup ecosystem, and I would give credit to the federal government, which in the last 2 to 3 years have taken a number of measures to really promote that sector. We continue to see that now with the technology, with the focus on technology as well. So just concluding, so I think the future of technology remains uncertain. But with the potential and the advances in technologies and data, so both from an AI and analytics, machine learning, we talked about, I think it's an opportunity for all of us, all businesses, all individuals to really rethink how we work and how to go about in embracing the technological disruption. So with that, thank you so much. Thank you everyone for your time. Really glad meeting all of you. Some of you I already knew, and thank you for your insights and discussions as well, and looking forward to stay connected. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Pleasure.
Allah Hafiz.
Allah Hafiz.